Hello, family. We hope that you're enjoying yourselves here with us on the Lit Television Network. We're interrupting the current programming in order to begin our following scheduled broadcast. Enjoy.
Welcome to Building Your Capacity with Reverend Dr. M.L.K. Raven. I'm glad you're joining us tonight because our special guest, Reverend Jesse Black, is going to share with you about his life, about the things that he has overcome in his life, and the exciting things that he has been able to do because he focused not on what was happening to him, but on how he would react to it, how he would recover from it, and how he would continue to seek out his purpose and his goals in life. So listen in as we speak with Reverend Jesse Black. Jesse, please join us.
Thank
Hi,
you. Thanks for
I'm
having me,
so
Dr.
glad
Raven.
you're joining us this evening.
Thank you.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about yourself. So start off at the beginning. Where are you from?
I'm from Chicago, Illinois, born and raised. I grew up in the west side of Chicago during the born, of course, 1967, and grew up in Chicago during the early 80s. And I moved to Texas in my sophomore year in 1983.
Okay, so you grew up in Chicago in the 60s. What was that like?
Well, being a product of the 60s, of course, you know, there was a lot of turmoil in Chicago. And as we went through the 70s and the 80s, there was a lot of gang violence because there were major gangs there, the Vice Lord, El Rookins, the Disciples, Black Gangster Disciples, Latin Kings, Latin Disciples. And these gangs pretty much ruled Chicago, but they knew it was areas that they were off limits to churches and schools. They, knew they could not mess around with. But there was quite a few people that, of course, grew up in the city with me. Of course, Isaiah Thomas, Mark Aguirre, Kurt Cummings, people of that stature. As far as sports, then you had those who were entertainers, Bernie Mac, Shaka Khan, and people like that. They were mainstays in Chicago.
Wow.
My barber, his brother played for the Chicago Bulls, Bob Love. So we would sit there as he's cutting my hair as a child, watching his brother play. So there's a lot of things that happened as I was growing up in Chicago, good, bad, and ugly. But I think for the most part, Chicago is a very loving, compassionate city, although we don't see it today in the violence that we're seeing. But there's a lot of loving and compassionate people there that care about one another.
Yeah, so you grew up in that wonderful environment. You said that you mentioned the gangs and those sorts of things. Did you become a part of a gang?
Fortunately, no.
Okay.
They knew which ones and who to mess with. If they saw you were not paying attention in school, if they saw you were a dropout, those are the ones they grabbed.
Okay.
They didn't bother those that were trying to achieve something. And for the most part, you had rival sides. You had West versus the South side.
Okay.
So basically, the West side was your vice lords and your disciples, your full hustlers and all those things. On the South side, you had your Black P-Stones and your Black Gangster Disciples.
Okay.
And it was certain colors that you did not wear.
Okay.
If you were on the West side, you did not wear black and blue. If you were on the South side, you did not wear black and gold. So you had everything from the colors to certain blocks of streets. This is our turf or this is our area. Once they tore down all the projects, now you have people that were opposites or adversaries living with each other.
Okay.
A lot of this is coming from now. people that didn't like each other over years living next door to each other because they torn down projects.
Okay. So you grew up in this environment. You saw, as you said, the good, bad, the ugly, the great basketball stars, and all of that. What were your dreams back then? What
Mhm.
did you dream about doing?
Um, I wanted to play sports. I was too short. As far as I played football, I ran track, and I wrestled in high school. But I knew I would never be able, because of my height, to be a pro player. So I learned different things. As far as I wrote a letter to President Jimmy Carter when I was in the 6th grade
Hmm.
about something that we ended up the Air Force side bombers. So they were looking at scrapping the B-2 bomber program back in the early 80s. And I wrote a letter to President Jimmy Carter thanking him for saving that program. Realizing that we would need the cover back in '91 during the Gulf War. So in a way, I had teachers that kind of inspired me to think past Chicago, think past what grade I am, and to into the future. So when I look at the future, I love human interest things. I actually doing one of my years in summer school, I made about $350 answering current event questions.
Okay. All
So
right.
thing from Anwar Sadat to Menachem Begin. So knowing these things in the school, like, why does he know so much? And the teacher said, because he's paying attention to what's going on around him. So that's kind of what led me to becoming minister, because I'm concerned about our area, I'm concerned about the people around us, because no man is island, and we can't keep living like we are.
Mhm. Okay. So you went through high school. Seems like you did pretty well. And then what? Then what happened in your life?
When I was 13 years of age, my first stepfather shot my mother 3 times and shot himself in the head, and I witnessed it at the age of 13.
Hmm.
Leaving my mother in the hospital. She was in the hospital for about 3.5 months in a coma. My grandmother was the caretaker for me and my brother and my sister. And I was in a strange place. I was in the church, and I started drinking when I was 15. So there was a sense of where do I go from here?
Right.
What do I do from here?
Hmm.
And then, of course, after my mother regained her, she came out of the hospital. My grandmother died 2 years later.
Oh, wow.
So this is roughly 1982, 83, and I'm a sophomore in high school. But there again, a key component of my life has changed. Um, and my mother was well enough. We ended up moving to Texas, but I left everything I knew and everybody I knew in Chicago. Even though I had family in Texas, I was not familiar with those people. I would, during the summers and things like that, but I was more familiar than anywhere else. So moved to Texas, and the drinking increased.
Okay.
I got around a group of people that did not go to church. A lot of them did not go to church. A lot of them did not know God. So to go from a private high school to a public high school was a shock altogether.
Yeah, that's huge.
Um, yeah, and I think because of the amount of family that I do have, I have family in 15 states. Um, there was always support, but I still had to find my way through life, dealing with what I
Hmm.
was dealing with.
So Jesse, it seems like there were so many things that happened to you all, growing up, avoiding the gangs and the different circumstances that you had, and then you had other life issues with things that happened in your family that you just mentioned to us, and on top of all that, had to deal with a major move from Chicago to Texas. You mentioned that you were struggling with drinking. How did you turn everything around?
When I went in the military in '85, um, I was still dealing with it, battling with that, but like I say, I'll fast forward a little bit to as we were heading to the Gulf War. Um, we left El Paso, Texas, on our way to Saudi Arabia, and we had to make an emergency stop in New York. And we were
Okay.
in the air. What happened? Well, we found out that part of the engine on the plane fell off. So I believe that was God's message to not only me but other people. We needed to do something different than what we were doing. We ended up, of course, in a minefield, as I said when I Thanksgiving night. Dealt with our chemical alarms going on several times over in the Gulf War. But even after all that, I was still in a place of um, drinking, using that as a crutch and things of that nature. But it was not until 2005 when he called me into the ministry and he literally took the taste out of my mouth. He told me I would be working for him. And I literally, with my first marriage, I lost everything I owned. I was staying with a friend. 3 o'clock in the morning, he had me eat the Bible, um, Genesis chapter 12, where he told Abraham to get around thy kindred and to a land that I would show you. I understood the scripture, but I wanted to think. And my now wife, her father told me, boy, God is telling you it's time for you to come around here. So I went, believe it or not, back to Texas, and I was uncle as my
Mm.
and from 2005 to this, I have never taught. You know, it was not a 12-step process. And to this day, I can't even stand this. I don't even want to be around it. But
Mm.
took me, it took me to a place where everything that I was meaning and had, I did not go through these things just to go through them and not be able to help somebody along the way. So now, as I talk to people about dreams, as I talk to people about domestic violence, as I deal with the youth in a mentoring school system, there's a purpose behind everything that I have to deal with,
Mhm.
that now I can actually pull and say, okay, look, this is what I'm through. This is how God brought me through.
Right.
It did not always feel good. It did not always feel good. And I think that's where many of us were looking at things feeling good, not realizing that everything will not feel good.
Mhm.
Everything will have, God has the best for it, but sometimes we have to go through things. We may not like it.
Right. Yeah. And so I love your story um in that you went through some things and you turned to God, but even in turning to God, and I love the way you said that, that doesn't mean everything will be smoothed out. Um, Sometimes you
Mhm.
go through consequences, and it still takes a little bit of time, and you still have to struggle through. But you can't give up, and I think
Mhm.
from even the beginnings of the story that you told us about what happened in Chicago and dealing with the gangs and all of those things that you dealt with. What I keep hearing from that is you didn't give up. Um,
Right.
so when you mentioned you share with others about this, I think one of the fascinating things about your story and about what you do is how now you mentor and you pour in to young men. So tell us about that.
Well, I've been mentoring for over 10 years in the Richland 1 District School District, as well as the Lexington 2 School District. We mentor third, fourth, and fifth graders, and more importantly, the young men, the young boys.
Mhm.
to let them know that um, you may seem like the victim now, but don't use that as your mantra for your whole life.
Mm-hmm.
Don't think that you can't make it out of what you make it out of. Like I mentioned when I wrote that letter in the 6th grade to President Jimmy Carter,
Mm-hmm.
it was teachers that inspired me to think past where I was.
Okay.
Um, and now, as I mentioned, I look at and I ask the questions. Um, what do you plan on doing when you grow up? What is your plan A, B, and C?
Mm-hmm.
Because most people are only looking at a plan A, but you need to have a backup. And we're not
Right.
teaching the backup plans anymore because everybody thinks they're going to make it to the NBA. Everybody thinks they're going to make it to the NFL or
Mm-hmm.
whatever sport. I brought in Xavier McDaniels. I brought in other people to speak to the youth to let them know everybody is not going to make it to pro sports.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to have good grades. You need to be able to look at life as okay. If I don't make it here and I don't have good grades, where am I headed? Well, you're probably headed to jail or prison, because we know that prisons are built according to 3rd and 4th grade reading test scores and math test scores.
Mm-hmm.
This is really not talked about because though the powers that be say they want to help, but a lot of them really don't want to help because if we curtail violence and we get these kids back to learning, that means it's going to be empty jail cells. They're still looking to arrest people. That means the gun manufacturers won't be making more guns because there will be not a threat to a person's house. We have educated people willing to work for what they have versus steal what they want.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody that says they're for you, you got to be watching. You have to make sure you have good discernment and watch what they're saying, watch their attitudes, watch their behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
Um, then I also do prison ministry, so I see the end result of those who don't listen in school end up in prison. And when I go into the prison, I teach a class called life skills,
Okay.
and I ask them what is their plan B? What do you mean my plan B? I said your plan A got you put here.
Mm-hmm.
So what is your plan B to get out of here?
Mm-hmm.
You know, are you going to get your GED? Are you going to get your diploma? Do you have a trade? Do you have a skill set other than stealing or robbing or whatever you did to get you put in prison?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you'll see people say, okay, you made it through this, make it through this. But you can,
Right.
but you need to have a positive around
Yeah. So when you meet one of these young men in the school and they have gone through some things, so that they've either it's maltreatment at home or some type of circumstance that they did not bring on themselves, and they just feel like they're stuck. What is the first thing you say to them?
One thing I do is I encourage them. I don't down. I ask them, what do you see yourself past 5th grade, 6th grade, whatever grade they may be in?
Mm-hmm.
What are your aspirations? What are your dreams? I recently had I was Senator Clyburn a couple of weeks ago when he mentioned what the initiatives he's doing here in South Carolina and
Mm-hmm.
how he's going to help bring them about because the problem with the youth in the school system. And he said, we're going to start telling the truth about history, which is
Okay.
surprising that most people don't understand that there is a misunderstanding of truth about history.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so getting them to understand that you're not the problem unless you want to be the problem. You can be the solution or you can be the problem. So that's where I kind of lead them. What side of the coin do you want to be on? What side of the fence do you want to be on? If you want to be part of the solution, I can help you. But if you want to be part of the problem, here's what's going to happen. One of the things I talk to them about, making sure that they pay attention in school, their grades are good, that they're becoming, as I ask them to be examples, classrooms. help the teacher out. Do not become help them help the other students.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. And so you said you mentor students in the school system. How did you do
Yes.
that? Is it just you, or are there several mentors? Tell us a little bit more about
Well,
how
I
it
have a
works.
group of men. I have a group of men that we started with, and this plan is under a gentleman by the name of Dr. Leo Richardson, who will be 90 years old on the 19th of this month. And the plan that he came up with was, how do we help the youth pay attention in classes? So he went about putting a plan together to say, is there stable jobs for the parents? Is there
Okay.
stable housing for the parents? So if these things are stable, the kids can basically pay attention in schools.
Okay.
So his plan works, but here's the problem. Prior to the pandemic, there was a report that came out stating that 3,000 third graders statewide failed the reading and math test. Well, it was actually 4,500.
Oh, wow.
They did not give the full numbers. And this was 2 years before the pandemic. Now, they did not hold these students back until the first full year of the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
What we found out is that the teachers were teaching a class of 30, but they failed students acting out, causing problems, which actually hurt the entire class. So that's where we came in, as far as we pull those young men aside, talk to them, get them to understand, okay, you can't be doing this in school. This is not your purpose. You should be here to learn and help. So over the years, we've been able to get to certain people, but I'm looking at petitioning more men and women to come out and mentor, because even the young ladies are starting to act
Wow.
out, to the point where they're disrupting classes. And if it's not curtailed at the third, fourth, or fifth grade level, it continues until you see what's happening in the high school. And some of this stuff is actually being permitted from the home side. You
Okay.
know, no one wants anybody to say anything to their child until they're in front of a judge,
Hmm.
or until they're on their way to be locked up. Then you want us preachers and other people to start talking to your kids and for your kids. We can't do that. You either going to be in a situation where you let us help you early, or you could be causing your child demise.
Hmm.
When we look at the mentors, like I said, I have a few, but I need more.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I love that. So it takes community to help address
Mhm.
the challenge of children who are misdirected, and need some help to get back on track. But I also love the what you brought up about parents, because teaching the children is amazing, but when they return to the home and the home is not providing the adequate circumstance and leadership, then for the most part they're getting it there at school or when you all are mentoring them, but then it's being reversed when they get home, because they're not
Right.
getting that guidance from parents as they should. Um, this mentoring program, you said, how many years have you been engaged with it?
We're heading north of 12 years.
Okay, awesome, awesome. And so what have you seen? Have you seen a turnaround uh, with the young man that you have been mentoring? Can you give us an idea of a success story of what has happened and how you've been able to impact at least one of the young men?
Yes, we had one young man who was very disruptive. He would from the time he got to school, even on the school bus, to the time school ended, he was causing havoc. He was causing problems. So the principal called us together and said, well, this young man has these issues. And it took us roughly 3 months to even get him to speak, to talk. And so I asked him, I said, what do you like to do? And he finally said, I like basketball. I said, well, what do you like about basketball? And he said, I like the uniforms. I like, playing ball. I said, well, can I inform you of something? He said, what's that? I said, do you realize basketball players that don't follow instructions, sit on the bench? He said, no, they don't. The coach got to let them play. I said, no, they don't. I said, even though they're making all that money, they still have to follow instructions. I said, right now, what I need you to do is look at what you're doing in the classroom to either help or hurt you, not hurt anybody else, but hurt you. And within a year's time, his grades changed,
Wow.
his attitude changed, and all because he saw somebody that cared. We were not yelling at him. We put our arms around him. We showed him that he cared. I had to go out of town before President Obama left office. My wife wanted to go to DC. I get a phone call in DC. He was asking about me. Where was I at? And they said, well, he went out of town for a while. And I shed a tear because I'm like, okay, we made a difference.
Right.
And that's what impresses me from people. They're not all bad. They're just looking for somebody to care.
Yeah. That's a wonderful illustration of what you can do when you take the time to focus and to care. You can really make an impact. And not only are you helping that one individual, but you never know how many others he will help. So as you're building his capacity for just living, basic living of thriving in life, you're also helping others, maybe even helping his parents and his family to see a different way. So I applaud you for what you do in the school system and with the young men. It's really awesome. And you've shared so much about your life and those and how to overcome the circumstances of life, because life will happen, but you're still able to make a difference, still able to overcome those things, to build your capacity to thrive in life, and then also to be able to help others. So thank you so much, Jesse, for sharing with us this evening about a little bit about your life and a little bit about the things that you do. So
thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So thanks for joining us on Building Your Capacity, and we hope to see you next week.